So now we want to do something very exciting. When we kill our enemy, we would like to have the enemy have a potential to drop an item. So if you've played this game, you know that when you kill the enemy, he might drop a rupee, which is this game's form of currency, or he might drop a weapon like a bomb. And right now, we're going to create the foundation for an item drop table that will allow us to select specific items that different enemies can drop on death. And we'll start building out this feature in the screen.js file. So what we're going to do is we're going to define a possible item drop table in the screen, and then we'll have different events that can occur when things happen. So let me show you what I mean. Let's just go into screen, and since we have our enemy here, we have enemies, item drop. I had already preemptively commented that out. And what we're going to do is we're going to have this enemy, just for now, potentially drop a bomb. And I'll set it to 1. And we're going to have a scale from 0 to 1 to indicate the chance the enemy will drop this item. So 0 is equal to 0%, while 1 is equal to 100%. 0.5 will equal 50%. I think you get the idea. And to give this entity the ability to drop items, we should also create a component that can hold this data. So let's go into our component.js and let's create an item drop component. Follow the pattern, constructor, component type. This item drop table, Let's add this to the registry so that way we can successfully add this in our game. Item drop const component value, new entity components, item drop. And I have to also export it. I'll write that in right here, item drop component. Now item drop component name, component object. Add the break. That looks good. Now let's go to our index.js and add this to our enemy. Const item drop component. We'll do dummy item drop component is equal to name item drop value. And we need to pull out the item drop value. So let's go refer to our screen and we can see that we just need to pull it out from there, like we're pulling out the X and Y. Item drop table. Let's just make this item drop. Let's just actually name this item drop instead. Item drop. So everything is named the same. Item drop. Very good. So how is this going to work exactly? Well, on the enemy's death, we're going to use this string value that we wrote here, or this key value, to go into another data structure called the item table, the item drop table, which we will write. We have not yet written, but we're going to use this value to select the proper function out from it, and then to call that function. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually just create a new folder called items. And we can call this we'll create a item drop table.js file. And I'm going to define a few different constant strings. The first one is going to be bomb. The next one will be 1 rupee. And the last one for now will be 5 rupees. And we're going to create our item drop table. So we're going to export it as well. Item drop table. And each key is going to align with each one of these constants we created. And the value for each one will be an object. So bomb, 1 rupee, 5 rupees. Let's begin with bomb. So what's going to be in this object? Well, we're going to define 3 functions within this object. On drop, on pickup, and on disappear. On drop, on pickup, on disappear. The reason why I've chosen to define these 3 functions is because these are the functions that we need to fully flesh out the behavior that each item has in the game. So for example, when the enemy dies, there is some kind of thing that happens, right? When the enemy dies, he drops the value, he drops the bomb. This function is going to fire when that enemy dies to show us the bomb. Another thing happens when the item is walked over. What happens? Link picks it up and adds the item to his inventory. So then on pickup will occur. So then on pickup will be fired. And the last thing is sometimes when the item disappears from the screen, there's some kind of event or sound. So we'll be using on disappear to play sounds. Let's start with on drop. So what do we need for on drop? Well, we need 3 things. We need registry because we will be creating an entity that shows the bomb. And then we also need to know the position, the X position and the Y position that the bomb should drop at. So presumably this would be the position component of the dead enemy. But for our purposes, if you ever want to have an item appear away from the dead enemy, you may want to be able to pass in your own custom X and Y values. So why don't we just pass in those values to this function instead? So now let's create this entity. So const dummy position component, like we're used to, name, position, value, X, Y, height. We'll just make it 70 and then, or maybe we'll make it a little bit smaller. We'll make it both 50-50 for the height and the width. Then the next thing that we need is a sprite. So dummy sprite component, name sprite, value. And we should think about where we're getting the bomb from. So let's see. The bomb is on this. It's right there. It's on this sprite sheet. Okay. So the path is going to be just link.png. And I know what the src rect is going to look like. It's going to be x 240, y 225. And we'll set the width to 18 and height to 18 as well. You know what, better yet, let's move this over very slightly. We can change that later if it's not perfect. And there still is something else that we need. Now, this item drop component, it's going to enable the enemies to drop the items, however, and it will define the behavior that occurs when this drop is interacted with. But we need to have some kind of data that tells the game what to do with this item. So what I'm trying to get at is we actually need a separate component for the item itself. We haven't created this yet, but I'm going to write it out. Item component, and this is going to just be the normal item component value, and it's going to have item type equal to bomb. And let me go and create this right now. So class item component, extends component, constructor component type, component object. And I saw a typo up here. Oh no, that was correct. It was just my screen. Okay, this. And then what is this going to be? Well, there's going to be an item type. Component object item type. And let's not forget to do the super. And let's export item component. And also in registry yet again, let's add this into the registry. Copy, paste, remove the drop. I think that looks good. Oh, but also remove the drop right here. And let's import the component in. Very good. Let's go back to the item drop table, and now let us create the entity we've been working towards creating. So we'll take registry dot create entity, and we'll simply just pass in all of these components. So let's test that out now. We can go to system and health system. Now here's a perfect place to call this onDrop function, because once the enemy is destroyed, it makes sense to call this function. And actually, we want to first check that they do have an item drop component. So let's do item drop is equal to entity components. If item drop, then we call the functions. And I say functions because we may have multiple items that the enemy is capable of dropping. So what we're going to do, and we haven't done that with our current enemy, we only have one item defined here, but we may have multiple chances where it looks like something like, you know, maybe it's 0.15 rupees, 0.5, I don't know, bomb. And we will want to have a bit of a randomization between the drops based on the chance. So the way we do that is we're going to loop through the keys in the item drop. And we want to get that value that's associated with each key. So we'll do value equal to item drop key. And we can do a simple logic comparison between math and random. And if the value is greater than the random value, then we can do this specific drop. So let's get the const x, y out of entity components position and import item drop table. And with this key, we can call onDrop and pass the registry x and y. And since we only want one item to drop, not multiple at one time, we can call a break for the for loop. That looks good. Get the component. We go through the keys in the component. Wait, that might not work. No, we need to actually, we actually need to get the component first and then get the property, not the component itself. Okay. Let's try it out now. Okay, it looks like it's getting an error. Cannot find link.png. Okay. It's because this actually needs to go into assets. Okay. Assets, link PNG. Let's try it again. Oh, very good. Oh, but instead, I'm actually getting the rupee. I should be seeing a bomb drop. I'm getting a rupee dropping. All right, so we were a little far away. Let's try for 360. Oh, not found. Oops, I accidentally deleted this assets. Try that again. Cool, and the bomb is right here. Fantastic. So it looks like that's what we needed. Now we should handle what happens on pickup. So what will happen on pickup? Well, the player's inventory for bombs will increment by 1, and the entity will then be destroyed. So let's go into our item drop table. What will we need in order to do this? Well, just off the top of my head, we may want the entity itself, right? Because we need to get rid of it. And we should also probably have the player. And once we have those two things, we can do what it is that we need. So the first thing that we want to do is, why don't we increment the bomb counter? And let me go back into our components, because it's been a long time since we made this inventory component. We're going to want to just increment this bomb by 1. So we do player.components inventory dot inventory again dot bomb, and we can just add 1 to it. And then the second thing we want to do is we want to delete this entity, so we can just use the entity's registry property already, and entities to be removed, and we can just push itself into this array. Now that we have this on pickup, how do we determine if there is an overlap between the player and the item? Well, as we are using in many other systems, we are using that AABB collision formula to make a lot of systems work. And for this system, it'll be no different. We're going to create a new system to keep track of the items that are on the ground. And let me take just the formula. Here we go. This looks like a good one to copy because it's very organized. So class item system extends system constructor system type super system type this component's requirements, and the only requirement that I think that I need is item, because what we're going to do is we're going to component requirements, because what we're going to do in update is we're simply going to just pass the player in every time. So player, cool, player, and then wrap it in the F statement to make sure it's not undefined. And we're pretty much just going to do for let I equal to I less than this entity's dot length I increment. And we should do entity 1, that's fine. Let's get E1 position. And we can just replace E2 with player. E2 position. I'll just do player position to make it clear. PX. And I'll get rid of the 2 on these to keep it coherent. We can leave the 1 on the other one, I guess. There's no real problem with that. Replace these values. Intersection. Let's take a look. E1. Now let's see. Oh, well, of course, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's actually export the system so we can add it through the registry and then call it in the index.js file. So case item system, new system is equal to new item system, system type, break, and in the index.js. Let's add the system like that. This registry get system, item system, update this player. Now let's see how this works. Okay, we have an intersection. We can see to the right in the console. It is working as it should. Cool. So if we go into system, let's go to that intersection. Okay. And we can call the onPickup function. And we'll do that by getting item type E, and we can E1. Why don't we just do this item? Because we know it's going to have the item because that's a requirement. So from item, there is item type right there. Okay, very good. Now go into the item drop table and we'll use the item drop table item type, and we'll call onPickup. And we'll pass the entity, which is E1 and player. Let's see, console.log. Inventory. And why don't I even just console.log before and after this happens? Let's see. Cool. So we see the inventory. This is really the bomb property. It incremented from 0 to 1. So that worked, and we saw that the bomb disappeared. Now to wrap this up, let's play an audio clip when the bomb is picked up, or when it disappears rather. So we'll do audio, and we should do assets, or actually I think it will be assets back because this is going to be played from the registry file. So it's one up, and we'll say play. And what's going to happen is, since this entity is being removed, and I'm going to get rid of these console.logs now, we want to check in our registry when we are getting rid of these entities. We want to check to make sure if it's being removed to play any on disappear sounds that there might be. Let's do this. For this situation, let's pull out the item component, or we're going to see if it exists. So if the item component exists, then we will pull out the item type. And then what we can just do is we'll import the item drop table, and on item type, or using item type, we can access the proper key, and we'll set to, and we'll call on disappear, just like that. So let's see now. Oh, actually, I forgot to turn on my sound. Let's try that again. Cool. I heard the bomb drop sound and the bomb pick up. Very good. And now that that's all in place, that's the proper foundation we need in order to have other items drop as well. So why don't we figure out how we can do that for the 1 rupee and the 5 rupees. So the 1 rupee is pretty similar. Well, it's similar in terms of the on drop, on pickup, then on disappear calls. And just like before, we need registry as well as the X and Y. And we can do const dummy position component. And before, I actually plugged in the X value that works out quite well for the 1 rupee, which is good for us. So I think the X value, if I remember, is something like 238 or 240. So we have that. And then const dummy sprite component. Value. So the path will be assets link.png. For the src rect, here is where I can add in that X is equal to 240. Y is equal to 224. Width can be 18 and height can also be 18. And then const dummy item component. Can set that equal to name is equal to item. And then value is equal to item type. 1 rupee. And let's push it in. Oh. Using the registry object. So create entity, and we can put that into a array. So there we have on pickup, and then for we have the on drop. Now let's think about the on pickup, and it's pretty much the same thing, right? We need to increment the player's inventory by 1, and we need to get rid of the entity. So we can just do player components. Pretty much can just copy this right here and just change the bomb to, what was it, rupees. Ooh, rupees by 1. We can add a console.log before for rupees. Just copy paste that in. Then after for rupees. And then on disappear, what do we want to do? Well, I have a pickup rupee sound. So all we need is just to pretty much copy this audio and change it to this MP3. It sounds like that. So pick up rupee MP3. Cool. And then finally, let's do the 5 rupees drop. And I'm going to just copy this for the most part. There are some changes that I need to make, but it's quite similar. Let's go through each one. Let's start with the position will pretty much be the same. The X, we'll need to move it over by 1. So I think that's probably like, what, 270? Or what is it? It's about 20 over. So we'll just do 265-ish. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, but I think that's about right. We'll change the item type to 5 rupees. We can also keep these console logs. I'll set that to 5. And for the on disappear, we're going to make this a little bit different. Since I don't have a sound that sounds like the 5 rupee pickup, in the video game, it's like a longer, more drawn out sound than just this. Oh, There we go. It sounds like 5 of those. So I'm going to just make a for loop. And I'll play this 5 times in a row. And let's test each one of these things out. Let's go to the screen. And now let's comment out the bomb. Let's do 1 rupee. I think we can just do that. Let's try for the 1 rupee now. Let's play the sound as well. Okay, it sounds good. Before for rupees, after for rupees. Now let's try for the 5 rupees. Five rupees. Oh, just set it to 5 or to 1, excuse me. Let them come, and I'll have to turn on my sound, of course. There we go. I don't know if I like the sound that much, but before for rupees was 0 and after is 5. So all the item drops are appearing to work as they should, and that's what's important. Play around with the sound if you would like to change it, or if you think it sounds good, you can leave it like that. And now that that's working, I think the next course of action that we should take is to reflect these changes in the inventory. We should be able to increment the number of rupees that are being displayed by the bottom half of the inventory. And I also want to now do a little bit more work in our inventory to be able to select specific items that we may have. Because as you know, Link has an active A, which is our sword, but now we need to be able to select his secondary weapon as well. Once we have a secondary weapon in the inventory, like we do with the bomb. So what I'm going to do is I would like to actually go into our component, and I'm going to just set a default value like that for our inventory, just so we can see what's going on with it. Let's now go into the inventory screen and work on drawing these values. We can do this right over or right below the sword. And what we will do is we'll wrap this in an if statement just to make sure that the player is defined. Render number of keys, bombs, and rupees. Now let's get all of these values. So we can do that by just pulling out this from the inventory. So we can do bomb, rupees, keys, player components, inventory, dot inventory. Let's set the font color to white, or let's set the font, sorry, this is not a function. We set the size right here, and then this c.fill style equal to white. And now let's do the fill text. So this c.fill text, one at a time, we can do bomb. Let's start this at, let me see, I think that's 118 if I'm remembering correctly, life text, gold icon, bomb and key, okay, maybe not 118, that sounds a little too far. Let's start it at 95 for the bomb and keys icon. Let's take a look. Bomb, key. So bomb is on top. Let's do it at Y125. We'll set it to 20 or maybe 30 for bomb, and then C fill text. We'll do rupees. And that's slightly lower, so we could do 120. Or no, sorry, it would be the same X, but let's do 140.30. We have keys, which is at the very bottom. We can do 155.30. And let's go to our game. 1, 2, 3. Okay, a little too spaced out. Let's fix that. Maybe just by 5 would probably be best. Let's see how that works now. No, 1, 2, 3. We need to move it over a little bit more. We can do X. So maybe 102. Not bad. Maybe now 37.49. Oop. Okay, but you guys, you get the idea, really, right? Play around with these values, find the thing that works best for you or what you like the most. It's not perfect, but I can leave it like that. For the sake of teaching this, it's not so important. Oh, and we also saw that the rupees incremented properly, which that means I actually do not have it at the right spot. So why don't we just switch these places and then adjust the Y values as well. So we can just do 20, 31, maybe even move this down by 19. By 1, I mean, to 19. Okay, that's fine. I don't need to go crazy with this. What I'm now more concerned about is setting up the inventory screen for when we pull it down. So if we go now to the game, I have this screen, but I have nothing there. I need to be able to look at it and know that I have bombs. I need to be able to look at it and be able to select an item. Okay. I also should be able to pause everything that's going on the screen as well when this happens. So let me go back. So we can go into our inventory. Or no, we're already in our inventory screen. Good. And we only need to display the rest of this stuff when we are paused. So why don't we do this at the top of is paused, and we'll set up how the inventory screen is supposed to look in the game. So we can say this font is equal to 12%. There we go. We'll say the fill style is equal to red. Then fill text inventory. We can select it to be at the top left corner, and we want it to be relatively wide. And we should be able to fill now the inventory with the items that Link has. So fill inventory with items that Link has. So let's get the inventory. We can do this by doing player components inventory, similar to what we were doing up at the top. So now that we have the inventory, this gets a little tricky because what we're going to do is we're going to be able to go through each item to select which one we want to equip for our active B. And we'll use this inventory in a second. But perhaps now that I'm thinking about it, let's draw out rest of inventory screen. So there are two blue boxes. One that shows you what B item is selected, and there's another one that kind of wraps around all the inventory. So why don't we do... And maybe, let me just do this. C begin path. We'll do this for each stroke. Begin path. This is C font. Again, well, actually, we can just keep the font. That should be fine. maybe let me set this line width equal to 2, and this C rect 30, 30, 30, 30 should work. We're going to make a blue square in the top left corner. This C fill style is equal to blue. And then this C stroke, we should do top left blue square. And then blue square that defines the inventory space. And this C begin path again. This C rect, you could just set it to something like not very high from the top, or not very far, I should say. Then set the width to be that, while the height can be 50. Line width can stay the same. Stroke style or fill style should be blue. Sorry, I think this should be stroke style, right? So we can just keep it there. You know what? Why not? I'll just rewrite it again so it's clear. Then this C dot stroke again. And then finally we'll write use B button for this. So this fill style white. This fill text. Use B button. And we'll put this on one line. Put it at like 35, or actually 30. And then 35. Then we'll make it about 100 pixels long. Use B button for this. Begin path. This C stroke. My computer's lagging a little bit. And actually, let's see how this looks. You know what? We need to move it down. It won't look very good because it's going to overlap actually. Let's see how this looks now. Use B button for this. Good enough, I think. Cool. So now that we have that done, I want to draw the items that are in his inventory to be selected from. So we're going to get the keys from this inventory. And I'm going to put the initial value to be initial x equal to 150, which is the same as in here. We can set the initial y to be the same as this y. And now let's loop through the keys. So then keys.length. We'll just do bomb right now because that's all that we have. Item is equal to keys.I. And if item is equal to bomb and inventory item, which is now getting the number, is greater than 0, then let's draw this item. So this C draw image. And where is the link.png? It's on link sprite sheet. So we can just draw this. Let's go into the item drop table so we can see exactly what it was that I drew, that I used to draw the bomb before. Let's see now. That's 360. So it's 360, 224, 18, 18. Now that's for the destination, but we need to add 4 more values for the source. So we'll start it as initial x plus, let's make a width of 18 times I, initial y. Then we'll make it about that large. Let me just set is paused to true. And also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially freeze most of the systems if the game is paused. So why don't I go into render system first, and if it's not paused, this is paused. We can do that. We'll start off with this system first. A link sprite sheet is not defined, 175. Okay. Okay, so we see the bomb right there, actually. Not bad. Or maybe I won't have it paused. Maybe that isn't the right way to go about it. Actually, we'll keep it like that for right now. Just because my game is a little slow with this recording software, maybe it's best to keep it paused and make it go quicker. I do want to move the bomb over slightly to the right. X. Down there, okay. Initial X, let's start at 145 and maybe set the Y to 18 because it seemed like it was too far up. Let's try it again. Okay, not a bad placement. I want to move it back up a little bit, but I think that's pretty good. Okay, so that's good enough at the moment. And now let's go ahead and create some kind of functionality that will show the cursor that we have. Now, if you remember in the game, it's a cursor that's red. It's just a red square around the selected item. So what I'll do is I will actually have a cursor position X and this cursor position Y. And we can set it to just be 20 by 20 maybe. I think that's probably a good width. Or perhaps 30. Well, you know what? Let's do 20 by 20 and then reduce the size of this bomb. And I'll move it over a bit. And then we'll set the C line width to 1. Or maybe make it a little bit bigger, 1.5. And we can set the stroke style to red. And then we'll do the stroke. And let's just see. Oh, and also let's create the position to start with. So this is going to be a property that X. And where do we start the very first item? It looks like it is at 130 and 20. So why don't we just set the initial position at cursor position Y at those values. I meant to say line. I mean stroke style. There we go. Okay. Oh, seems like I messed that up. Let's go back. And I'll just duplicate this screen. The Y does not need to be so far. I meant to set it to 20. And I think I was still off with the X. We'll just see how that goes. It needs to be over a bit more. Set that to 50. Okay. Let's do 160, and then this needs to be moved over by 50 to 50. Play around with this value. Okay, so I decided on cursor position X 155, and for the bomb, for the initial X to be 140 and the initial Y to be 20. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be having an array, and I need to align what we see graphically with where each item is in the data. So in order to do that, I need to first have the data set up properly. I would like to have an array of everything in the inventory so I can select it from the inventory properly, and I'll be pushing it into the inventory right down here when I do this item layout dot push. I'll pass the item in, so then that sets up my data to be in the right order. And cool, so now that we're going to add some kind of cursor, some kind of graphical interface to interact with this array, before I do that, the situation with the pause is kind of bothering me, so let me add this in. So we're only going to really fire these systems if if it's actually not paused. So probably just do this make a huge if statement. I think that should be okay. Let's take a look. Of course, now it's ugly when it starts up like that, but it looks good. So the enemy, we can see, stops in his tracks when it's not paused. I mean, when it is paused, he stops. So I will leave it like that. Cool. Okay. Good. I'm glad that's fixed because I did not like how that was working. Let's now add some kind of cursor movement situation. So let's have a selected item property, and that will refer to this item layout array and the item within the array. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a move cursor up, down, left, right. So move cursor up. We're going to have one for each direction. Up, down, left, and right. So for moving up, we need to imagine that we have 2 rows, and we have to determine how many items per row will we have. Well, I think it's going to be about 4 or 5 items. So I only want to allow the player to go up if the selected item is greater than 5, or greater than 4, because that means that they will be on the second row. So if selected item is less than or equal to 4, we'll just do a return. If not, then let's move this, or let's change the selected item by 5, and we can change the value by y. This cursor y co. Set that to 25 just to start, and we'll see how that works. This cursor position y minus this cursor y. There we go. Cursor y coefficient. So let's do down now. And down will just be the inverse of what we have up there. So if it's greater than or equal to 5, return, because that means that it's already on the second row. Then if not, selected item minus 5, or decrement by 5, I should say. And if this cursor position y incremented by this cursor y co. And then for cursor left, the only 2 spaces that we should not be able to move left at are the items in the very first column. And those items will be the item at the 0 index of the array, and then the item at the 5th index in the array. So if this selected item is equal to 0, or this selected item is equal to 5, return. Else, this selected item minus 1, this cursor position, And actually, I think it'll just be the same. I think we'll just have this. You know what? Maybe it won't be the same. Why don't we just make another coefficient? Keep it 25 for right now. If it ends up being the same, we could change it later. It's cursor xco. Now again, this selected item is equal to 4, or this selected item is equal to 8. We should return. Else, this selected item plus 1, this cursor position, this cursor xco. Now let's be able to call these from the handle input, handle user input. So in WASD, we will have the ability to move up or down in the inventory, but only if it's paused. So if this is paused, so if it's true, else, then we can drop these values into here. So if it's paused and the person presses W, that must mean they want to move the cursor up. So this inventory screen, move cursor up. Then for A, that means they must want to move to the left. It's paused. Else, drop these values in the else. This inventory screen, move cursor left. If this is paused, we'll have an else. Drop it inside the else. This inventory screen, move cursor down. And then last but not least, we should handle D. So if this is paused, we'll set the else. Copy and then paste it in there. And then this inventory screen, move cursor right. Cool. Now nice. Okay. So what do we do once we move the cursor somewhere? Well, we want to be able to select a specific item that we have highlighted. So why don't we use V as well to select the item that we want? And we can make this distinction as well. So if is paused, we got to put this value. So this will get brackets because the code that we want will be in there. And we'll wrap this other if statement inside the else, like that. And what will we do when we select the item? Well, we're going to select the item and save it as the active B item. Okay? So we need to make that change. So we need to change our component, our inventory component, to have an active A, or excuse me, to have an active B, because I don't think we have one of those, do we? Component. Or we do. I've defined it a long time ago, but now we need to actually set it. So similar to how in our animations we're setting our active A, right here, we need to now set the active A to a bomb. And I see that I have sword here. I will need to create a const bomb as well to contain all this information. We could set the damage to 3. We'll set the path to assets link.png. Image will currently be undefined. And we will need an src rect. Now this src rect, it's going to look the same way for every direction, so I don't need to worry too much about this. Let's get where the bomb was. So we have it at 360, 224, and 18. So we can use those values. So x is 360, y is 224, width is 18, and we'll just use height as 18 as well. We'll make sure we export this. Now we can go to our index.js. Now if it's paused, what we can do is I actually want to create a const weapons table. So we can more easily select it, because what we're going to be getting from the inventory is the word bomb, and I want to match it up and easily select it. So I'm going to be getting the select index. Let me just make sure that I'm getting the right name for all this stuff. Let's see, we got, selected item. Selected item. I'll just pull it out. Const item. This inventory screen. Selected item from this inventory screen. Item layout. There we go. Selected item. And then we will set the this player components inventory. We can go right here. Inventory active B equal to weapons. And I have to make sure that I am exporting weapons table, which I'm not. Weapons table item. Okay, let's go over the inventory screen and make sure everything is being passed correctly. So we can start up here. Okay. This loop inventory screen, we're getting the selected item, which is actually the index from here. Actually, okay, it's funny how when you go back and look at something a second time, things pop out at you. Since this is in the render function, I'm realizing now that this for loop can continually be called and populate this array and make it huge. We don't want this. We essentially only want this to happen on initialize. We need it to fill in the item layout once. However, that's difficult because, and I'm just looking at it, we need to constantly draw the image on every render frame. So we have a mixture of functionalities in the render function. So what do we do about that? Well, this array begins as an empty array, so why don't we separate it just based on the length of the array? Item layout length is equal to 0. Else. So what I'm thinking is we will use this for loop in the else statement, and we'll take out the push. And in this statement, we will take out the draw image. And while I'm doing this, I'm also realizing there's some other things that we probably want to add into this loop. And that would be if we look at the inventory, we see that sword is undefined. We don't need sword in either the item layout or to be rendered in this part of the screen. So if item is equal to sword, and we don't need the rupees either, so if item is equal to rupees, and finally, we don't need keys. We only have one item we need to render. Ooh, so if item equal to keys, we can continue. And we'll drop this logic structure also in this loop. And then let's check the moves. And I'm seeing an issue. I did -5 or decrement 5 here, and it's also going decrement 5 here. This needs to be plus. And we actually need this to be 9. Let's see how this works now. It looks good. I can't go up. I can't go right. Can't go left. And I can't go down. I can't go right. Cool. So we're in this box. That's good. Let me get rid of this console.top, console.log.top, because it's annoying. And now for the final piece of the rendering, let's illustrate or let's draw onto the screen the active B. Because right now we can select the item as active B, but it won't show up. And why don't we do this right below the active A so we can keep them together. So let's do if player.components inventory active B player.components inventory active B dot name, or how about we'll just keep it like this since we only have one weapon. You can make this more complex later because we know we just need to render the bomb at the moment. So this C draw image, we have this link spreadsheet. We can take these values as the source. And for the B, let's find where B is again. Draw B button. I could take that right here. So this is in the bottom third that the player can see even if it's not paused. And then let's go into the part where it'll be paused, that we only render when the game is paused. And we'll do some similar logic We can do it even right here. But this time our destination will be different. We can put it right here. $150, $22. Okay, cool. So I press the button. It's rendering okay on the bottom, but on the top, we definitely need to fix that placement. So let's change that. Oh, I think the X was way too far over, which makes sense. Because actually, the blue square that I wanted to do was this one. 30. Okay, not too bad. It's now in the inventory. Let's fix the other bomb because that does not look very good. The one that's in the B. It's a bit too big for my liking. Can make it smaller. Okay. It's good enough for the moment. We can alter it later, but I'm happy with that. Nice. So we've finished the inventory part, and we now are able to select secondary weapons.